Hi guys, my name is Megan Joseph. I decided to make a me quilt for my writing autobiography project. This project was one that was listed in the Tompkins book, and I thought it was one that really allowed me to show some of my writing from when I was younger, from when I was a student, some from now, and then as a writing teacher. I really like being creative and adding lots of visuals and color to my work. So here you'll see like an actual representation of the total quilt. And now we'll go into each little quilt square. This quilt square is all about the things that I like to do as a writer. I am a writer who likes to share my personal experiences and relate to my readers. I found that when someone can make a personal connection to my writing, I feel that the experience is more meaningful. I found this to be true with my students as well. When I write things about my life, they connect it to their lives and they find that to be really exciting. So when they're writing, I always like to write beside them, so then we can constantly be building their writing skills and making those connections and sharing our experiences. I'm also a writer who likes rereading my writing and revising it to make it better. I've always liked to kind of take a second look and try to make sure that the words that I put down are really portraying the meaning of the writing. So I always like to edit and revise, and this is something that I really try to make sure my students are doing as well. To the side, you'll see some of my writing pieces from when I was younger. I believe I was in second or third grade. So a lot of that writing was also about my personal experiences and about my interests. And even back then, I was always editing and revising to make sure that the words I wrote really were what I was trying to tell the reader. This quilt square talks about what I don't like to do as a writer. I am a writer who doesn't like to plan my writing ahead of time. I find that when I have an idea or I am told to write about something, that I just kind of start without planning or organizing my thoughts. But I have noticed that since I do like to revise and edit my writing constantly, that what I think will be a final copy actually ends up being a rough draft. However, I do think that using, some sort of graphic organizer to plan my writing ahead of time would help with the elaboration of my thoughts and, the organization of my writing. I always tell my students to think about their writing beforehand and use some sort of graphic organizer, even if it's just jotting their thoughts down on paper before they start their actual writing piece. So with this being said, I kind of have started recently using a planning page. In hopes that, one day I will enjoy it, but I do find that it is actually helping, so I will continue to do that. To the side, you'll see some of the graphic organizers and planning pages that I've given my students in the past. I like to give my students a variety of different sheets to choose from. Some of the students like to use charts like the T-chart pictured. Some like to use graphic organizers that look like webs. For students that need extra support, I'll give them sentence prompts and some more guidance and guidelines like the graphic organizer pictured at the bottom. It really just depends on, what they need more support in. So this quilt square is all about my writing from when I was a student, specifically when I was younger and in elementary school. As a student, my writing was very organized and usually reflected my interests. In second and third grade, I really enjoyed the poetry units that we did. These units allowed me to talk about the fun things that I did in and out of school. I especially loved acrostic poems because I could keep my writing organized. As a student, my writing also included details that really helped the reader create a picture in their mind. During the time I spent editing and revising my writing, I would make sure that the words that I was using, especially in my poems, were the best words to describe the topic. I would use circles for the words I wanted to change and question marks next to the ones that I didn't know if I spelled correctly. I would underline the words that were really important to me and make sure that the details that I was using really helped the reader create that picture in their mind. This is something that I talk to my students about. Sometimes they'll work in peers and they'll read their writing to their partner to see if their partner can create that picture in their mind based on the details. On either side, you'll see some of the acrostic poems that I made when I was younger. Of course, they were about my interests and the different things I was doing outside of school. I also have a writing piece down in the bottom corner that was from the All About Me book that my class created in third grade. We had to write about our family and our different interests, so this was definitely a time that I could add those details that I loved and really revise and edit my writing. This quote square is where I talk about what my writing has allowed me to do. Personally, my writing has given me the opportunity to reflect on my experiences and express myself. During my senior year of college, I was a teacher resident where I taught in kindergarten, second, third, and fourth grades over the course of a year. So with these experiences, I kept a journal where I would write down the exciting things that happened each day, especially like the things that I would use in my future classroom and in my future teaching. So looking back on this journal, I'm able to see how I've grown as a person and as a teacher, and it helped me to realize that constantly writing can be a good way to reflect on my experiences and constantly improve and learn. I can see what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are, and I think that having writing as an avenue of reflection has really helped me become the teacher I am today. Below are pictures of some of these journal entries. They show different days from different classrooms where I learned some important lessons and some techniques that I want to use in my future teaching. And I definitely think I will continue to journal so I can constantly reflect on myself and kind of really improve as a teacher. This quote square talks about me as a writing teacher and the ways I support my students when they're writing. As a result, as a writing teacher, I encourage my students to write about topics that they feel passionate about. I've noticed that when my students can truly connect to a writing topic, their writing is more expressive and the whole experience is more meaningful for them. I like to give my students different writing prompts so they can find which ones they care most about and really feel motivated to write. I've learned recently the importance of authentic writing tasks, so where my students can use their writing to solve a problem or use writing to show different points of view. So these will definitely be some prompts I include in the future. As a result, as a writing teacher, I also encourage my students to plan, revise, and edit their writing. Like I've said on a previous slide, planning my writing isn't exactly something I really enjoy doing. However, as I learn about the importance of planning, I teach my students about it as well and encourage them to take part in the pre-writing stage. So I definitely think that making this engaging for my students and finding some fun ways for them to plan and organize their writing can make the whole experience more enjoyable for everyone. I've also talked about the importance of revising and editing, so these are two things that I always have my students do. Often they'll work with their peers and they'll collaborate and showcase their writing. The students will help each other choose more descriptive words as well as edit their papers. I found also that my students really love writing when they know who their audience is, so this is something we always talk about during each writing project. In the bottom right, you'll see two anchor charts that I've made for my students to use while they're writing in their classroom. Arms are the steps for revising and cups are the steps for editing. So I find that using acronyms really help the students remember what they're supposed to be looking for when they're editing and revising, and then hanging up the actual visuals in their classrooms also helps too. This quote square focuses on what I would like to know more about when considering writing. As a writer, I'd like to know more about how to make my writing more concise. Something I've always struggled with is being able to condense my writing. Being able to summarize is a necessary skill, and although I can do it, I think it would be beneficial for me to learn some specific tips and maybe some strategies for how to further improve. Seeing I like to revise my writing, learning some strategies that help with word choice would ensure, I choose words that help lead to more concise writing, especially when it comes to, documents and emails and other times when teachers need to make summaries. I just want to make sure that, I have a firm understanding. These strategies can also be transferred then to my teaching, and I can pass them to my students for when they're learning how to summarize. My hope is that in this process, I not only become more concise with my writing, but more engaging and effective as well. To the right, you'll see some of my recent writing pieces that contain lots of descriptive words, but I think could be condensed given, some extra strategies. In the bottom corner, I found some words that can be used to replace like long-winded phrases that I think will help me in learning how to be more concise in my writing. This quote square depicts the things I hope to do someday as a writer and a writing teacher. As a writer, I hope someday to learn different techniques that will transform my writing into something more creative. You've seen on previous slides that I constantly write about my personal experiences and my interests and what I do on a daily basis. I would like to be more creative with my writing and make some short stories that have different characters my students can connect to and relate to. I would love to include things that show the world around me. I think going to some creative writing workshops and using different mentor texts will really help me become more creative. So in the middle, there are a bunch of different books by different authors who I love and who really inspire me to be more creative and make some short stories that my students would enjoy. So for example, I love Mo Willems and the simple nature to his stories. Laura Numeroff books always make students laugh, and many of my students can relate to what the different animals go to given the different books. The BFG was one of my favorite books growing up. When I was in 5th grade, we went and saw the play, just confirmed my love for the story. Diary of a Worm, I love the structure of the book and how it's separated by the different days. I see that the kids really find that book to be enjoyable. Megan McDonald's books, the Judy Moody books, I loved growing up as well. So all these authors really just encourage me to be more creative, and I also try to have my students be more creative too, so we'll look at some of their favorite authors when we're writing as well and kind of see how those authors write. As a writer, I hope someday to collaborate with my students to create a writing piece that brings teacher and student writing together. So something I've always wanted to do is create kind of my own class storybook, which has my writing and my students' writing all put together, and we kind of create our own story. So this is something that I would start at the beginning of the year so the students could kind of see how they've grown throughout the course of the year and even see how their, me as their teacher has changed as well. So it's just an engaging and a fun thing to bring to the writing classroom, and maybe even include all of the subjects across the whole day. So overall, I feel that my past experiences as a student have helped me see the type of writing teacher I want to be for my students and the different ways I would like to grow as a writer personally. Even though I like to edit and revise my work, I think that continuing to plan my writing and using those graphic organizers will really help me progress as I go through my career. I'm also excited to see how I can transform my writing into something more creative, while also still using writing as a reflective avenue to see how I'm improving and look at my strengths and weaknesses. I really enjoy writing, and I want to make sure that my students also feel motivated to write, especially about those topics that they feel passionate about. So I'll end with a quote that I think wraps everything up. I believe myself that a good writer doesn't really need to be told anything except to keep at it.